Alright, I've got my 5-man band all packed up and ready to go. I've delved into the Lancer's delightfully abrasive personality and endearing habit of running off half-cocked and getting instantly humbled about it. The Heart's compassionate, character-focused angle will help keep the story emotionally grounded and smooth over the conflicts when things get rough. The Big Guy powerhouse will lend some much-needed muscle and stalwart reliability, and the Smart Guy can help us navigate the complexities of our changing situation with a more nuanced approach than just hitting stuff good. That's all our bases covered in one clean sweep. And yet I can't shake the nagging feeling that I'm somehow forgetting something. Hey, wait a second! Where's the red guy? Ah, the leader. The big boss. The captain at the helm of this ship we call life. If the 5-man band were an actual band, this guy would be our main vocalist, perhaps slung with a largely decorative guitar so they can hammer out a few bars of the most impressive solo after the second chorus hits. Leaders are the linchpin that holds the entire concept of the 5-man band together, and it's frankly criminal that I haven't delved into them before. But if the leader is a character archetype, then what qualities does this archetype have? The other members of the 5-man band have such clearly defined characteristics. Lancers are rebellious hotheads, powerhouses are trustworthy heavy hitters, hearts are compassionate wellsprings of human kindness, and smart guys are nerds. But leaders? Leaders can be stoic and stalwart or goofy and fun, intelligent masterminds or brute force tanks, fiery and passionate or ice cold and logical, highly trained and competent or naive and fresh out of the box. Leaders can be good at guiding their allies, or they can get their group in tons of trouble without necessarily knowing how to get them back out. Lots of groups don't even have leaders. So what is a leader? What makes them tick, and what's the point of including them in a story? Today I'll do my best to answer all these questions and more, despite the fact that I have never in my life enjoyed the leadership of any authority figure, and it seems very unlikely that I'm going to start now. So I'll just keep my bad boy energy at a low simmer while we crack open these burning questions. At its absolute core, the leader archetype only has to do one thing: call the shots when the shots need calling. If there's ever a time where the path forward is uncertain, it's the leader's job to make the decision about what to do next, and take responsibility for whatever consequences come their way as a result. This is the beating heart of the leader as a role, and it's also the main reason why plenty of groups don't bother having leaders. If the path forward is always nice and simple, like use sword on bad guy or bring MacGuffin A to location B, those critical decisions don't really crop up, and there's no need for a dedicated boss to decide what everyone's gonna do. Or maybe the protagonists don't have an overarching goal that needs chasing, and instead drift through life waiting for plot hooks to snag them into an exciting new situation. These characters are fundamentally reactive, so they don't need anyone making their key decisions because they're just responding to threats as they arise. Loosely organized teams of heroes, like many superhero teams or D&D parties, might have a very flexible concept of leadership if they just follow the lead of whoever's got the most personal stake in whatever subplot is currently taking center stage. And even if there are leaders in a story, there's no guarantee that the protagonist is going to follow that leader. There's a reason that loose cannon who don't play by the rules is such a common heroic archetype. Just because a character has a boss doesn't mean they listen to them. In these stories, the primary role of the leader is to be a frustrating obstacle in the path of our protagonist's free-spirited shenanigans, and the heroes usually got some reason why they're exempt from having to worry too much about following directions. If, for instance, despite being a loose cannon, they are also the best cop on the force, and getting rid of them means losing a valuable asset, the leader is more of a structural antagonist than they are an integral part of the core cast. So there are plenty of ways a story can work just fine without a leader in the mix, but let's talk about how a leader can work. First off, if we're not doing the antagonistic obstructionist leader thing, then the leader archetype is generally firmly a protagonist and focus character. In fact, they're often the focus character. Even in an ensemble cast with multiple protagonists all sharing the spotlight, the leader of the group can still end up as more of a main character than most, simply because they've got the most agency and the most complicated decisions to wrestle. Sometimes the main character is even assigned the role of leader by some outside force. Being a chosen one can saddle a character with the responsibility of being in charge by default, and everyone who wants to help them out on their grand quest is gonna have to follow their lead. But even in stories without a designated central person around whom the entire plot swings, the leader of the group can still wind up taking up more of the spotlight than anyone else. The reason for this is actually pretty simple. There's a common writing question authors are encouraged to think about when it comes to choosing their POV character. If another character's life and experiences seem more interesting than the main story we're dealing with, then why aren't we getting that story instead? So in a story where one of the protagonists is unquestionably dealing with more complicated stuff than everyone else, they can end up sort of pulling focus simply because their POV on the story is the most fraught and exciting. For the record, this does not actually mean that to write the best story, you pick the most exciting angle and then go from there. There's a lot of benefits to having a POV character who perhaps doesn't know a lot of what's going on, and also not every story needs to be a high-octane, high-tension adventure 24/7. You can just be wanting to tell a specific story and tell that story instead. But this is a good question to consider because it helps you look at your own story from different angles and see which ones might be worth exploring. Now, the good news is, being the leader is not automatically theoretically the most interesting thing that a character can experience, so leaders don't automatically suck all the air out of the room, especially if the groups they're leading is composed of a sufficiently eclectic mix of plot hooks, side quests, and dark and brooding pasts. But for instance, there are a lot of color-coded teams with a theme where the main characters are largely designed to be interchangeable with only minor variations, except for the designated leader, who gets some kind of extra powers or fun toys, or just the burden of leading everyone else as best they can. All other things being equal, the guy with more going on is probably gonna have a more interesting angle on the story than anyone else. There is one note I want to make here, which is that sometimes the leader archetype doesn't hog the spotlight at all, specifically because it's overlapping a lot more with the role of mentor than it does protagonist. Mentors are usually very good at leading, because they're typically benefiting from a lifetime of experience and useful specialized knowledge that can guide the main characters down new and unknown roads without them all dying to the first threshold guardian they find. Mentors are often also more skilled, well-trained, and overall powerful than the young heroes under their care, further raising the question of why they don't get to be the main character instead if they're so much better at it than they are. But a mentor's role is usually to help a fresh, unprepared protagonist along the first few steps of a journey, and then become conveniently incapacitated or killed right when the going gets rough. So instead of following the tale of an experienced badass who knows the right tricks for every situation, we get to see the training wheels come flying off and end up following an unprepared new guy whose two choices are get good or perish embarrassingly. These tribulations are usually regarded as more interesting to watch, or at least funnier, than the well-equipped and highly prepared alternative, so mentors in leadership roles tend to get axed at just the right moment to leave our heroes rudderless in choppy waters. This leaves room for one of the unprepared new guys to step up to the plate and take charge as the new team leader. But the leader also has another factor that might pull them into the spotlight more than their allies. They've got unique dynamics with every other character that are affected by their leadership status. These allies aren't just friends or peers, there's a chain of command at play, and that can lead to some complicated feelings on all sides. While many characters don't mind being told what to do and may even appreciate the guidance and help, for many archetypes, this attempt at leadership leads naturally and inevitably to conflict. This, of course, is the beating heart of the Lancer archetype, the second fiddle in the five-man band who typically shares the strongest bond with the leader in the fact that they are constantly at odds. Lancers do not like to be told what to do, while that is the leader's entire job. So when the leader makes a call, what does the Lancer do? This is a question with no wrong answers because it entirely depends on the specific characters filling the leader and Lancer roles. Maybe the Lancer trusts the leader enough that they follow the plan anyway, despite misgivings. Maybe they have too much respect for them to let their questionable decision go unchallenged and it kicks off a tactical debate. Maybe they have a full-blown fight, and maybe the Lancer even wins. Sometimes, often even, the Lancer goes rogue and does their idea instead all by their lonesome, which may go well and may go very badly, demonstrating why the leader is the one calling the shots in the first place. But then again, leaders aren't infallible. This is part of what makes them interesting. Leaders have to make hard choices on behalf of everyone who follows them, and they aren't always going to work out cleanly. So what does the leader do when the plan fails and the consequence? And what do the other characters do when the leader leads them astray? No plan is 100% guaranteed to work, but it's the leader's job to call the shots and make the decisions in perilous situations where a lot of people are relying on them to keep them all safe and win the day. How do all of these guys feel about giving them that level of trust? How does the leader feel about having so many people relying on them? That's a lot of pressure. What makes the leader capable of inspiring that kind of trust in their crew? This has circuitously led us to the answer to our first core question. What actually defines a leader? What character traits do they have that define them as a leader among their crew? And that is, a leader is followed. A leader as a character archetype cannot be defined by any one internal trait, because it's not up to the leader if they lead anyone or not. It's up to the rest of the characters if they trust them enough to follow their lead. Sure, some leaders are charismatic, brilliant planners, powerful warriors, and the narrative's favorite princess, but not all of them. The leader is a role that can be taken on by any character in the right situation. They just need to be good at dealing with their specific crew in these specific circumstances. And weirdly enough, in the framework of the five-man band, this usually means the leader is sort of doubling up with another member of the band by sharing their job specialization. Like, if a leader's unique edge is tactical know-how, the ability to see all the angles and plan for the contingencies to get the crew out of complicated scrapes, then they're basically a smart guy doing double duty as the leader, while the dedicated non-leader smart guy on the team might be specialized into stuff like gadgets or niche lore expertise, so they don't step on each other's toes. Some leaders have the edge of being incredibly powerful warriors, perhaps with the aid of a chosen one thing going on, which makes them basically leader big guys, whose specialization is in hitting really hard where it counts the most. One very common trait for a leader is the ability to inspire hope in a seemingly hopeless situation, which means they're pulling double duty as the leader and the heart. The underlying character of the leader might slot into one of the other five-man band roles pretty cleanly, but that's secondary to their status as the person in charge. Unlike the rest of the five-man band, there's no pithy way to characterize the leader except by saying that the rest of the band trusts them enough to follow them. And while this can be frustrating, because we analyze tropes here, sir, there is something genuinely very fascinating about a character archetype defined by the trust of everyone around them. Because that trust goes both ways. It can't be guaranteed in either direction. The leader cannot be certain that the people who follow them will continue to do so, and those followers can't be sure that their leader will always make the right choices to keep everyone safe. The dynamic is tenuous. Unlike the rest of the band, the leader cannot be defined by their inner character qualities, but only by the trust of their team. Actually, on that note, it's worth mentioning that bad guys can also be good leaders. They frequently aren't, but it's totally possible for a full-blown villain to legitimately inspire trust and loyalty in their followers. And just like the good guys, this can be for any number of reasons. Many villainous leaders are driven by some overarching goal that their followers find compelling. World conquest is a frequent favorite that doesn't require much additional explanation, since that'll basically just put the villainous leader in charge of leading everybody, and the people who already follow them will obviously be in favor of that. Bad guy good leaders can be incredibly dangerous because their forces are a lot more robust than a more generically evil overlord with zero loyalty to anyone. If the bad guys are legitimately loyal, then the problem doesn't get solved by just kicking the main villain's ass or pointing out what a jerk they are. And this all gives me a great opportunity to delve into one show that has gifted me an absolute smorgasbord of leaders to play with, compare, and contrast. That show being Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. Spoiler alert for the whole thing, we're pulling no punches and I'm not even a little bit sorry about it. Now the first useful thing to note is that this show is chock-a with free agents that don't follow any leader. Our two protagonists are textbook loose cannons who basically only ever follow orders by accident, and several other secondary characters are entirely self-motivated and largely unattached from any chain of command, sometimes to their detriment. Fullmetal Alchemist has a massive ensemble cast of characters from all walks of life, and they can't really be bundled up into a single static team of good guys following the lead of the main character who's most prominent in the poster art. But the show also has several leaders with corresponding teams of followers, all navigating the series in different ways and largely working at odds with each other. And conveniently for me, some of these leaders like engaging in philosophical arguments about the nature of kingship while also navigating high-stakes battles to the death. One of the most interesting scenes in this vein happens pretty early on. In one corner, we have Ling Yao, one of several potential candidates to become the next ruler of his home country of Xing. Ling only has 2 retainers with him, but they're both fiercely loyal and extremely ride or die, which up to this point has mostly been played for comedy, because Ling likes to be silly and rack up room service on other people's tabs, and it's kind of funny that he's got these 2 extremely serious ninjas hanging onto his every word. And in the other corner, we have Führer King Bradley, the supreme ruler of the whole nation of Amestris. Kind of. See, in some ways, Bradley's kind of a weird paper tiger. He is in charge of Amestris' military, and his public image is the benevolent ruler of a country beset on all sides by hostile malcontents. But the image is a complete facade, and he's not actually the one calling the shots on anything. His entire life has been laid out for him by his creator, and he was one of dozens of nameless candidates trained and groomed to potentially one day wear the name and role of King Bradley, the useful figurehead to keep the country under control and unsuspicious while the true machinations lay undetected underneath it. Bradley leads the country, but he couldn't give less of a shit about anyone who lives in it. As far as he's concerned, this entire rulership gig is one massive scam at the expense of the Amestrian civilians who are unknowingly being used in a countrywide scheme to literally harvest their immortal souls for the empowerment of one fucked up little guy that got snacky after digesting the first country it ate. So here's Bradley, a man with millions of people who trust and follow him only because they've all been expertly lied to on a scale nobody could anticipate, a willing figurehead with nothing but disdain for the people who trust him with their governance. And here's Ling, a man who wants nothing more than the opportunity to save his clan and protect the people who trust him to do so. Ling, who up to this point has been a full-blown funny haha character, is suddenly revealed to be terribly sincere in his ambitions, and the trust and devotion his followers show him is rendered completely understandable when we see the lengths he goes to keep them safe. Bradley hasn't earned the trust he's been given, and thus dismisses the concept of leadership as one big grift at the expense of the followers. Ling very accurately calls him him a false king and says that there is no true king without his people. There literally cannot be a leader without those who choose to follow them, and that trust has to go both ways or the whole system falls apart. A leader has to be worthy of their people or they're no leader at all. Bradley doesn't exactly disagree, he just seems to think leadership as a whole is worthless bunk. As we later find out, Bradley is most in his element when he's getting to single-handedly battle entire armies and sword fight tanks. He's not getting the enrichment he needs having to play nice with politics. It's no wonder he just wants to kill people. This theme of leadership requiring mutual trust is echoed in several other characters, like Olivier Mira Armstrong, a terrifyingly ruthless commander who holds the absolute loyalty of the Briggs soldiers because she's earned that loyalty over and over again with loyalty of her own. She's extremely willing, eager even, to dive into the front lines and do the most damage where it would be most tactically advantageous for everybody, and she'll bend or break her own rules to make sure her people make it back alive. For such a classically ruthless character, she's extremely unwilling to make any sort of sacrifice play, probably because it's a weakness to sacrifice your own valuable loyal soldiers unless there's really absolutely no other choice, and it's also a weakness to not find those other choices before doing anything that's stupid. The Briggs forces trust each other unconditionally because that is how you make an army that is as strong as humanly possible, and strength is the one priority that Olivier has. Roy Mustang is another leader with his own small crack squad of loyal followers and a cunning scheme in mind wherein he's going to become the supreme boss of everybody and keep the whole country safe by keeping everyone he has the power to personally protect safe and trusting them to keep everyone they can personally protect safe, etc, etc, etc. Like a big pyramid scheme, but for friendship. But Roy's main thing is that he also knows how very easy it would be to stray from the path of theoretically turning this country into one that doesn't do a genocide every couple decades and instead become a violent, self-centered despot exactly like the one he's hoping to replace. Having witnessed and participated in the Ishvalan genocide under the direction of Führer King Bradley, he's seen how monstrous a leader can be, and how monstrous the people who trust and follow that leader can become. So he's got his most trusted lieutenant, Riza Hawkeye, watching his back with orders to shoot him, like literally shoot him with a gun, if he ever strays from those ideals of good leadership and becomes too much of a tyrannical dickhead. And it's a near thing a few times. Roy and Riza have one of the most beautifully complicated dynamics in the entire show, because the trust they have for each other truly goes all the way down. Codependency wishes it had what these two have. And once again, over in Team Bad Guy, we've got the perfect Goofus example of how not to be a good leader in the ultimate big boss man, the creator of the homunculi, Father. Now, Father's got a sick evil scheme cooking to get himself powered up enough to eat and replace God, which is the kind of plan that doesn't really leave room for anyone else to benefit. The homunculi mostly serve him because he made them, although his prodigal son Greed has a tendency to rebel as soon as he remembers the power of friendship and scrapes together another found family about it. In fact, Greed is another incredibly useful example of what good leadership can look like, because Greed thinks of the world in terms of having stuff. Friends? Awesome! That's more stuff he has now. When he's first introduced, he's leading a loyal crew of renegade chimeras, and while he insists this isn't a friendship thing and they're all just possessions he has, he's pretty cranky when they all get horribly murdered. You know, because it counts as breaking his stuff and no other reason. For most of the show, Greed can't accept that he has friends, and instead has to think of them as followers, people whose loyalty he one-sidedly owns and can therefore exploit. In fact, he's kind of baffled when some of our main characters enthusiastically agree to be his followers, because they recognize that for him, this is just friendship with extra steps. He thinks he's being a perfectly self-centered bastard about it, and everyone who follows him is just giving him what he wants, but pretty late in the game, he figures out that, surprise, this dynamic is actually reciprocal. The people who follow him trust him just as much as he trusts them, and what's worse, he's actually earned that trust from them. Whoops. But considering his role models, it's no surprise that Greed thinks leadership should be an entirely one-sided, exploitative affair, where the followers adore the leaders and the leaders sacrifice their followers whenever it's convenient. After all, that's Father's entire MO. And it's not until quite late in the game that it becomes clear how much Father is willing to sacrifice to get ahead. Father's first and arguably greatest homunculus creation is the monster Pride, a shifting mass of shadows, eyes, and teeth that is by far the most terrifyingly dangerous thing in the show. We've already seen Pride sacrifice and devour his own fellow homunculus Gluttony just to give himself a little boost after a slightly taxing fight. And appropriately enough for the sin he represents, Pride really seems to think that he must be the special exception to the rule that everyone is disposable in service to Father's plans. In the lead up to the big final battle, Pride has to have it pointed out to him that Father fully left him behind without even a backward glance, after Pride made a major sacrifice specifically for Father that left him literally falling apart at the seams. Ed points out that that's not very good behavior for a leader or a father, and Pride does not take this well. Truth hurts. Faces of the whole show right there. But yeah, it's a pretty inarguable theme in the story that leadership of any any form does not work if the trust and the benefits of it are entirely one-sided. A leader who exploits their followers isn't a leader, they're a parasite. All the good leaders in this series serve the people who follow them. Literally, it's in the job description of public servant. If your job is making decisions on behalf of the people who gave you that job, all of those people are your boss now. And even Ling, a character whose society is in no way democratic and is personally on track to inherit the title of emperor from his dad, recognizes that leadership still has to be fundamentally for the people it leads, because otherwise, what is the point of a king? A leader gets to lead a group of people because those people trust that the leader will guide them to a better outcome than they could reach without them. It's the leader's job to weave the strengths of the group together, to direct and delegate and organize a crew of individuals into being able to accomplish something greater than they each could do alone. If the leader can't do that, then they're definitionally no leader at all. And this is a common source of angst and drama for leaders. In fact, it's probably the most common arc for a leader to struggle with, since it's hooked directly into the foundation of their character. If the leader's job is to make everyone work together better, what happens if they feel like they can't do that? Leaders become responsible for the people who trust them, and that's a heavy burden. Some leaders don't even understand why their teammates trust them so much, and that can be fun all on its own. But that's also why a lot of stories put focus on answering the question of why this person is the leader. What specifically makes them so good at handling their team? What inspires the trust they have in the leader, and what does it look like when they have to make things work without them? This is another question with no right or wrong answers, because it fully depends on the specific leader in the group. The broad strokes answer is usually that the leader provides something that nobody else can quite pull off, and that something helps keep the team working together. Maybe they're highly motivated, which helps keep the team from losing steam. Maybe they've got a strong moral compass that helps everyone else maintain direction. Maybe they're patient in a team of emotional hotheads. Whatever the leader brings to the team is usually at its most starkly apparent when the leader winds up out of commission and can no longer provide whatever it is they embody so well. The rest of the team won't just be generically disorganized, they'll also be lacking whatever unique je ne sais quoi the leader was bringing to the table. And that can be different from character to character too. A leader who gives one character the patience they lack might be shoring up another one's limited supply of compassion, or keeping someone else from falling into the angst and despair of their tragic backstory. There's nothing that says everyone in the team has to trust the leader in the same way for the same reasons, and if anything, it's a lot more interesting if they don't. The most complicated part of the leader's job is that everyone they're leading is unique, with their own skills, challenges, plot hooks, and complications. The leader needs to be able to deal with all of those things, and that can mean that the leader fills a very different role in each of their lives. It's no wonder the leader archetype feels so weirdly hard to categorize compared to their bandmates. Being a good leader doesn't even always mean the same thing within the same team. No wonder these guys are always so stressed out. So, yeah.
I was raised by wolves, I was born to lead, and I starve till there's no more mouths to feed. There's a hand on my throat and a blade at my feet, but the weight of the world won't bend my knees.